In this video, I'm going to show you how to use Corel Draw to draw your ruler for the learning contract. We're going to do this in two steps. First step will be the document layout and the ruler itself, and then I'll come back in the second video and show you how to add some images and do a little image editing on that. So our first step is to create our document. We're going to make our document slightly larger than the finished ruler. This ruler is going to be 1.75 inches tall and 13 inches wide, so you end up with a ½ inch space on the left and right of your ruler itself. We're going to set up a document grid that we're going to snap to, and then I'll show you how to set up a 1-inch segment, and we'll duplicate that across. So first step in Corel Draw is File New. You'll be creating a document that's 14 inches wide, height of 2 inches, and your color range is going to be RGB. You can name this right now if you want. I'm just going to hit OK on this. Notice my new document is currently called Untitled 1. So the first step I'm going to do is a Save As. I want to make sure that I have this in a location that I can get on any computer. So for you, that best choice would be to go into OneDrive so that you can pull this off of any one of our laptops instead of being locked to one specific laptop for your work. I am currently saving my work on the desktop here in ruler tutorial. So I'm going to call this ruler, and then I'll put my initials after that. When you send this to the laser engraver, your file name is going to show up, so it's very helpful if we see your initials or your name in the file name. Now if you look to start out, all I have are some rulers up top, and they're in here. If you don't have rulers, you can go to View and show your rulers there. I have the document itself on top of a white background. There's a number of things we're going to do to set this up. We're going to go into Options here. It's right here. It's also under Tools and Options. And we're going to set a number of things here. We're going to start in Background. So when we put the grid on, it's kind of hard to see your document. I'm going to pick a color and pick something light. Like I'm going to pick something that looks like a piece of birch plywood or something. So I'll select that light color and hit OK. Now I don't want to send that background color to the laser engraver, so I'm going to uncheck print and export background, so we'll just keep it white in the background. You don't want to burn that part on your wood. Next step is we're going to go into the grid. We're going to set up this ruler at 16-inch or 1/16 increments, so I'm going to set my horizontal and vertical guidelines for 16 spaces per inch, so I can snap right to those 16ths. And then I'm going to both snap to the grid and I'm going to show the grid. The last thing I'm going to do on my ruler is to set my vertical distance to 2. Right now, if you look at my ruler, the top of my document's at 2 and the bottom's at 0. I'm going to flip that. So I'm going to put my vertical in at 2 so that it starts with 0, 0 up in the corner here. And then I'm going to hit OK. So notice I've got all these grids on here. I have this nice light background to work on as I go through here. So my first step, we're going to vector cut this ruler out of your blank, whether it's maple or you can use acrylic for this. So I'm going to begin by drawing a rectangle. Now you could perfectly snap in here because we're snapping a grid and we want to check that. The only thing we want to snap to right now is our document grid. That'll keep everything on those perfect 1/16 increments. So I can perfectly snap in here 1 down and 4 over, and I can draw that in, but let's say I misdraw that. This is the size of my object up here. So right now, if we look at the center, this is a 14-inch wide document. I want to center this at 7, and I'm going to want the Y position at -1. I can stretch my document or my object width to 13, and the height I'm going to put in at 1.75. And you just want to check it doesn't shift anything around there on you, but it's still centered at 7 and -1. For that object. Now this object, this is going to be a vector cut around the outside, so we're going to have this little piece of scrap when we're done. We're going to change the color from black to red. So over here, I'm picking back up there, I got to select my object. I'm going to right click to turn that red, and then I'm going to go up here and select hairline as the thickness of the line. The laser cutter will only vector cut if it's set to hairline. Now I don't want to mess this up, so I'm now going to go up to Object, and I'm going to lock that object. So if I try to move that, I should get the little padlock on there, so I'm not going to screw that up later on. can always unlock things under object, and then you can unlock all objects, or you can select an object and unlock it. Okay, we're about to draw the actual ruler here. So just as an example, if I look at a normal ruler, your inch marks are going to be longer than your half inch, then it's going to step down to quarters, eighths, and sixteenths as we go through. So we're going to attempt to do the same thing here. So we're set to black for our color here. We're going to open up the freehand draw, which I think is default. We're going to go to 2-point line, and we're going to draw this one 6 spaces. So it should be 3/8 of an inch. So 2, 4, 6. If we look up here, because we're snapping only to the document grid, it landed right at 0. It is 0.375 long, and it really has 0 width because the width is just based on the line weight. If you see a width in here, that's because your line's crooked. So like if I draw a line that's crooked in here, you'll see the width of kind of that segment. So I'll undo that one piece there. We'll go over to the 2 now. I'm going to draw the line where 1 inch, so I have 0 and 1 inch. I'll go to the center, and I'm going to step back 1 grid space, so only 5 grid spaces there. Then I'll go to quarters and snap in 1 below, and then we'll do our eighths. And then finally we'll go back and do our 1/16 increments. So with only snap to grid on, it allows us to draw those nice straight lines, all the exact increments. If you have objects, it could snap anywhere along this red line, so it's important we only have that document grid on. Now at this point, I am going to select all of those lines I just drew, and I'm going to go up to Object and Group. So now they're one group, and I'm going to step and repeat these all the way across the document here. So now I can just go in and click on one time, and I'm going to go to Edit, Step Repeat, and this, you're going to set your horizontal distance to 1 inch. This will be something different. I've done this a couple times now. And your vertical distance is 0. You don't want it to go up and down as you go across. And your number of copies will be 11. You're going to hit Apply, and you'll end up with 0 to 12. Now I'm going to select those again, and I am going to lock these because I don't want these to move either. I'm going to lock that object, so if I go to try to slide anything around, it's going to give me that little padlock, so I won't mess those up. Now that we have our ruler set up, we're going to go back and start to add in the numbers. So I'm going to zoom in here on the 0, and I'm going to go to the text tool, and I'm going to center this. So I'm going to kind of snap, I'm going to stay down 1, and I'm going to draw a box that's 4x4. I'm going to make sure that the text is centered, and I'll type in my 0, and then if you want, you can take your font size up a little bit. We're going to use the same step and repeat tool, so if that's closed at this point, you'll go to Edit, Step and Repeat. You've got to select your text box there. Distance is going to be 1 still, and we need 12 of those. We'll hit Apply, and then I'll take you all the way over to the other side. And then we can go through and we can edit those. So just with our text tool again, just start to highlight those. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add in some markers for the quarter and half inch fractions, just between 0 and 1, and then we'll duplicate those across. So I'll go back to my text tool, and I'm going to keep these a little smaller. So I'm just going to do like a little 2x2 box there. You are going to have to change the font size down pretty small. It's like 6 point, and then I'll type in my 1/2. Now notice that's not centered. I can grab it by that center mark, and I can drop it right on that grid mark, and then I can duplicate it. So I'll just do Control D, and then I'll drop this one here, Control D again. You could also do copy paste. Control D does both at the same time. So I'll go back into my text editor and make that one 1/4, and I'll make this one 3/4. Now I'm going to select these all. So I'm going to hold the Shift button down as I grab all 3 pieces of text, and then I'm going to go to Object, and I'm going to group these as well. And then I'm going to bring up that step and repeat tool again. And this time we're going to knock this back to 11. Hit apply. And then we get those little fractions all the way across. At this point, again, I would make sure everything's locked. So I'm just going to grab everything again. And I'm going to go to Object, Lock, and Lock Object so that I can't drag my text around as I start to do some imaging. So the next thing we'll pick up on is we're going to place some text in here, and we'll look at placing some graphics in.